The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Hundreds of delegates from across the galaxy sat in their climate-control pods, their thin bodies and large eyes marking them as species from gentle worlds. Fear filled the air, a fear that none of them had felt in over 3 centuries of peaceful cooperation. In the back row, where the temperature ran a bit cooler than the rest of the chamber, sat Ambassador Thomas. His sturdy human frame made him stand out among the delicate aliens. While others shifted nervously in their seats, he remained still, watching. The humans had only been granted observer status in the Council 2 years ago, and most species still viewed them with a mixture of curiosity and unease. "The crystal mines have taken new garden," announced Head Counselor Reed, his long fingers trembling as he projected the images of destruction. The gathered delegates gasped at the sight of the beautiful floating cities, now shattered and grounded. This marks their 3rd conquest in as many months. The crystal mines, a silicon-based species that had emerged from a heavy-gravity gas giant, had shocked the peaceful galaxy with their aggression. Their crystalline ships had easily brushed aside the Council's token defense forces. "Our peacekeepers were not prepared for such violence," continued Reed, his large eyes blinking rapidly. "They tried to negotiate, to reason with them." The crystal mines responded by. He paused, his voice breaking, by shattering them. Murmurs of horror spread through the chamber. Most species in the Council came from worlds with gravity barely half that of Earth's. Their bodies were light, quick, but fragile. Their weapons were designed to stun or disable, never to destroy. They had forgotten how to fight, if they ever knew at all. "We must act," called out Delegate Wilson, his thin frame rising from his pod. "But how? Our species have known peace for so long. We have no warriors, no real weapons." In the back, Thomas shifted slightly. The movement caught Reed's eye. "The human sits so quietly," noted Reed, almost to himself. Perhaps our observer has something to contribute." All eyes turned to Thomas. He stood slowly, his movements careful in the low-gravity environment. Even standing still, his dense muscle mass and sturdy build made him look like a giant among the delegates. "Earth has maintained its military forces," Thomas said simply, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We remember how to fight. But you were denied full membership because of that very militaristic nature," protested Wilson. "Your species comes from a death world." He said the last word like it was something dirty. Thomas smiled slightly. "Yes, we do. We evolved on a planet you would consider hellish. High gravity, extreme weather, predators, natural disasters. All of these shaped us, made us strong, made us survivors." "And what good would that do against the crystal mines?" asked Reed, but there was a note of desperate hope in his voice. Thomas tapped his data pad, and new images filled the chamber. Earth's military forces in training, running through environments that would crush most Council species, lifting weights that would snap their bones, enduring conditions that they considered unsurvivable. "The crystal mines evolved on a high-gravity world, like us," Thomas explained. "That's why your forces couldn't stop them. But we," he paused, letting the images speak for themselves, "we know how to fight in these conditions. We've been doing it our entire existence." Silence fell over the chamber. The delegates looked at each other, then at the human. They had kept humanity at arm's length because they feared their violent potential, their incredible physical capabilities, their warrior nature. Now, those very traits might be their salvation. Reed stood, his decision made. "Then, with nothing left to lose, I propose we formally request Earth's military assistance." His voice grew stronger. "Let us call upon the Deathworlders, not as observers, but as allies." The vote was unanimous. In their darkest hour, the galaxy turned to the species they had feared, hoping that humanity's strength could match their wisdom. As Thomas left to contact Earth, he knew the galaxy would never be the same. Sometimes, it takes a monster to fight a monster. and humans had been called monsters since the day they reached the stars. The Council's emergency delegation arrived at the Earth Embassy 3 days later. They had never visited Earth itself. Their fragile bodies couldn't handle the crushing gravity. Instead, they met in the orbiting diplomatic station, carefully maintained at 1/3 Earth's gravity. Ambassador Thomas led them to the main conference room, where screens lined the walls. General Rogers waited for them there, his military uniform crisp and his expression serious. The delegates noticed how even the chairs were reinforced to handle human weight. "Show them," Thomas said quietly. The screens came alive with images of Earth. The delegates watched in horror as massive waves crashed against coastlines during storms. Lightning split the sky. Volcanoes spewed molten rock. Animals hunted and fought each other. "This is your world," Head Counselor Reed whispered, his thin fingers clutching his chair. "You evolved. There. That's just the weather," General Rogers said with a slight smile. "Wait until you see how we train our soldiers." The screens changed to show military exercises. Humans running through rain and mud, carrying heavy packs, swimming through rough seas, climbing mountains, fighting in hand-to-hand combat. The delegates flinched at each display of strength and endurance. "Impossible," Delegate Wilson muttered. "Your bones should break. Your muscles should tear. Our bodies evolved to handle these conditions." Thomas explained. "What you see as extreme, we see as normal. Some of us even do these things for fun." "For fun?" Reed's large eyes widened even further. "You mean sports?" The next images showed football games, boxing matches, and marathon runners. The delegates watched in silence as humans voluntarily crashed into each other, punched each other, ran until they nearly collapsed. "Now you understand why we kept our military," General Rogers said. "Not because we want war, but because our world taught us to always be ready, to be strong." "The crystal mines," Reed began, his voice shaking. "They evolved on a gas giant. Heavy gravity, like your world. That's why our weapons didn't work, why our ships couldn't stop them." "Exactly." The general pulled up tactical displays. "Their natural environment is similar to ours in terms of gravity, but they've never fought another species that could match their physical strength. Until now." Thomas stepped forward. "The Council offers Earth full membership in exchange for your help. All trade restrictions lifted. All technology sharing approved. All previous concerns about your aggressive nature forgotten." The general nodded. "Earth accepts, but we have conditions." The delegates tensed. Here it was, the price of dealing with Deathworlders. "First," Rogers said, "we run the military operation our way. No interference from the Council." Reed nodded quickly. They had expected this. "Second, after this is over, no more keeping Earth at arm's length. We're either full partners in galactic society, or we're not. No more fear, no more distrust." "And third?" Wilson asked nervously. "Third," Thomas took over, his voice gentle but firm, "you need to understand what you're getting. Humans don't fight like your peacekeepers. We fight to win. There will be destruction. There will be casualties. Are you prepared for that?" The delegation looked at each other. They had never wanted violence in their peaceful galaxy, but the crystal mines had changed everything. Now they needed the very strength they had once feared. "We understand," Reed said finally, "and we accept your terms." "Then let's begin." General Rogers pressed a button, and new images appeared. Earth's military fleet, warships built by a species that had never forgotten how to fight, weapons designed by people who understood real combat. "Remember," Thomas said softly as the delegates stared at Earth's military might, "you called us Deathworlders like it was an insult. But living on a death world taught us something your peaceful worlds never had to learn." "And what's that?" Wilson asked. "How to survive against impossible odds. How to keep fighting when everything tries to kill you." Thomas smiled grimly. The crystal mines are about to learn what that means. As the delegation left to report back to the council, they couldn't help but wonder. Had they just saved their galaxy, or had they changed it forever? Only time would tell if calling upon the Deathworlders had been their wisest decision, or their most dangerous one. The massive training facility aboard Earth's orbital military station hummed with activity. Through the observation windows, Council Representative Reed watched in stunned silence as human Marines ran combat drills in varying gravity conditions. Even in double Earth's gravity, they moved with purpose and strength. "Impossible," muttered the alien military advisor standing next to him. Commander Blue, as the humans called him due to his sky-colored skin, shook his head. "They're training in conditions that would kill most species." Major Walker, the human officer in charge of training, stood beside them with his arms crossed. "This is just the warm-up," he said, checking his tablet. "Wait until you see the combat exercises." The chamber below suddenly shifted. Artificial gravity increased to match the conditions on the crystal mine's homeworld. Metal obstacles rose from the floor, creating a mock battlefield. The Marines below didn't even pause. They simply adjusted their movements and continued. "How can they even stand?" Blue asked, his large eyes fixed on the scene below. "That's nearly 3 times standard galactic gravity." "Because we have to be ready," Walker replied. "The crystal mines evolved in these conditions. If we want to fight them on their own ground, we need to be stronger than them." The training intensified. Marines in powered armor moved through the course, weapons ready. Others practiced hand-to-hand combat techniques adapted for high-gravity environments. Medics trained to carry wounded comrades under crushing pressure. "Stop," Blue suddenly called out, his voice shaking. "That soldier is bleeding." Walker looked where he pointed and shrugged. "Just a cut. He'll keep going." "Keep going. He's injured." "Commander Blue," Walker said patiently, "humans don't stop just because we're hurt. Our bodies heal quickly. We evolved to take damage and keep fighting." As if to prove his point, the injured Marine below wrapped a quick bandage around his arm and rejoined the exercise. Blue's color paled slightly. "I need to show you something else," Walker said, leading them to another chamber. Inside, engineers worked on modified versions of the Council's ships and weapons. "You're changing our technology," Reed observed. "Why?" "Your ships are beautiful," Walker explained, "but they're built for comfort. No backup systems, no armor. They're not made for war." They watched as humans installed reinforced plating, emergency systems, and weapon mounts on a sleek council vessel. What was once a peaceful transport was becoming a warship. "This feels wrong," Blue said quietly. "We built these ships to explore, to connect worlds, not to fight. And that's exactly why the crystal mines are winning," Walker replied. "They don't care about your peaceful intentions. They only understand strength." A loud alarm suddenly rang through the station. Marines rushed to their positions. Walker checked his tablet and smiled grimly. "Perfect timing," he said. "We just got word. The crystal mines are attacking another system. This will be our first deployment." Reed watched in amazement as the entire station transformed. Within minutes, Marines were boarding ships. Engineers ran final checks. Weapons were loaded and armed. "How," he started. "How are they so ready?" "Because this is what we do," Walker explained. "Humans prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. We train constantly, not because we want war, but because we must be ready for it." Through another window, they could see Earth hanging below them. Beautiful but harsh, peaceful yet dangerous, just like its people. "I understand now," Blue said slowly, "why you called them Deathworlders. Why you feared them." He turned to Reed. "But maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. Someone who knows how to fight back." The first ships began launching from the station, carrying human Marines and modified Council technology. They moved with purpose, with power, the first true warships the galaxy had seen in centuries. "Operation Earthborn begins now," Walker announced. May the crystal minds learn what it means to face warriors who evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. As Reed watched the fleet depart, he realized that the galaxy was about to change forever. The age of peaceful expansion was over. The time of the Deathworlders had begun, and somewhere out there, the crystal minds were about to learn they weren't the only species born in hell. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Crimson System. 3 crystal mind warships hung in orbit around the captured agricultural world, their crystalline surfaces gleaming in the red dwarf's light. Captain Mills stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Thunder, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Behind him, Commander Blue and Representative Reed watched in tense silence. "They're bigger than we expected," Blue whispered, looking at the enemy ships that dwarfed their own vessels. "Size isn't everything," Mills replied calmly. "Lieutenant, broadcast the warning." The message went out in all known languages. "This is your only warning. Leave this system or face the consequences." The crystal mine ships responded by launching fighters, beautiful, deadly shards of living crystal that sparkled as they approached. "They've never retreated before," Reed said nervously. "They've never had to." Mills smiled. "First time for everything. All ships, battle formation Delta. Marines, prepare for boarding actions. Show them what Deathworlders can do." The human fleet split into 3 groups. The crystal mind fighters, expecting easy targets like the Council peacekeepers, swooped in confidently. They weren't prepared for what happened next. Human ships, reinforced and armored, didn't try to dodge. They took hits that would have shattered Council vessels and kept fighting. Their modified weapons struck back, and crystal fighters exploded into clouds of glittering dust. "Impossible," came the first transmission from the crystal mines. "You should be broken." "We don't break easily," Mills responded. "Marines, you're up." Boarding pods launched from the human ships, specially designed to pierce crystalline hulls. Inside each pod, human Marines in powered armor waited, their bodies adapted to crushing gravity, their minds ready for combat. The crystal mines had never faced boarding actions before. Their previous victims had been too fragile to even attempt such tactics, but humans had been breaching enemy ships since their first space wars. Through the tactical feeds, Reed and Blue watched in awe as human Marines cut their way into the enemy vessels. The crystal mines were strong. Their bodies evolved for high gravity, just like humans. But they had never faced an enemy that could match them strength for strength. "They're retreating," Blue exclaimed as one of the crystal ships tried to pull away. "They've never retreated before." "Because they've never bled before," Mills said grimly. "All ships, pursue and disable. Don't let them escape to warn the others." The battle continued for another hour. Human Marines fought through crystalline corridors, their modified weapons shattering enemy defenders. Crystal Mine crew members discovered, for the first time, what it meant to face enemies who wouldn't die when hit, who kept fighting despite injuries, who seemed to grow stronger with each challenge. When it was over, all 3 crystal mine ships had been captured. The agricultural world below was free, but the cost was visible in the medical bay, where injured Marines were being treated. "They're hurt," Reed said, looking at the wounded humans. "Many are bleeding. Some have broken bones." "But they're alive," Mills replied. "And they'll heal." "That's what humans do. We get hurt, we heal, we get stronger." A captured crystal mind leader was brought to the bridge, its crystalline form dulled with defeat. It looked at the humans with its faceted eyes. "What are you?" it asked through the translator. "We checked the records. Your world, it's like ours. High gravity, harsh conditions, but you're not like us." "We're Deathworlders," Mills answered simply. "Just like you. But there's a difference. You thought being strong meant you could prey on the weak. We learned that being strong means protecting others." The crystal mind leader seemed to shrink. "The galaxy will fear you now." "Maybe," Mills agreed, "but they'll know we fight for them, not against them." As the human fleet prepared to liberate the next system, News of their victory spread across the galaxy. The Council species watched in amazement as their nightmares became their saviors. The age of peaceful isolation was over. The Deathworlders had shown the galaxy that strength without compassion was nothing. And the Crystal Minds were learning, one battle at a time, that they weren't the only ones born in hell. The Council's emergency meeting hall fell silent as the casualty reports appeared on the main screen. 3 weeks of fighting had liberated 6 systems, but the cost was written in numbers that made the gentle world species shudder. 237 human soldiers wounded, Head Counselor Reed read aloud. 43 with severe injuries. 12. His voice cracked slightly. 12 dead. Ambassador Thomas stood calmly at the podium, his sturdy frame a reminder of humanity's different nature. These losses are within acceptable parameters, he said. Acceptable. Delegate Wilson rose from his seat, trembling. How can death be acceptable? The doors opened, and Major Walker entered, his arm in a cast, face scared but healing. The council members stared at him. They had never seen an injured soldier continue to serve. Because we choose to fight, Walker said, moving to stand beside Thomas. Every human soldier knows the risks. We accept them because the cause is worth it. The screens changed to show images from the liberated worlds. Crystal Mind prison camps emptied. Enslaved species freed. Families reunited. And in every scene, human Marines, some bandaged, some limping, all still fighting. You don't understand, Walker continued. Humans don't break when we're hurt. We adapt. We heal. We grow stronger. A medical officer stepped forward, displaying scans of human biology. Look at this, she pointed to images of healing wounds. Human bodies are constantly repairing themselves. Bones grow stronger where they break. Muscles rebuild bigger after damage. You mean? Reed leaned forward, fascinated despite his horror. Injury makes you stronger. Within limits, Thomas explained. But yes, it's how we evolved. Every challenge, every wound, every loss, they all teach us something. The screen shifted again, showing Crystal Mind tactics changing. Their ships now tried to copy human battle formations. Their warriors attempted to match human endurance. They're learning from us, Walker noted, adapting their strategies, but they're missing the most important thing. Which is? Wilson asked. Why we fight. Walker gestured to the images of liberation. They fight for conquest. We fight to protect. That's the real strength of humanity. Not that we're tough, but that we use our toughness to help others. The council chamber buzzed with discussion. These Deathworlders were changing everything they thought they knew about warfare, about strength, about sacrifice. Show them, Thomas said quietly. New images appeared. Human Marines sharing their rations with freed prisoners. Medics treating injured Crystal Mind warriors. Engineers helping rebuild destroyed settlements. This is what you feared. Walker asked the council. That we'd bring violence to your peaceful galaxy. Look closer. We bring protection. We bring justice. And yes, we bring war, but only against those who would harm others. Reed stood slowly. When we first contacted Earth, we saw only the violence, the strength, the frightening potential. We called you Deathworlders and kept you at arm's length. And now, Thomas asked, now we see what that strength truly means. Reed's voice grew stronger. The Crystal Minds thought they were superior because they evolved in harsh conditions. But you humans learned something they never did. That true strength isn't about how hard you can hit, Walker finished, but about what you choose to fight for. The medical officer stepped forward again. The injured Marines ask every day when they can return to duty. They don't fight because they have to. They fight because they choose to protect others. The council voted unanimously to grant humans full military authority in the war. As Thomas and Walker left the chamber, they heard the delegates discussing plans to learn from humanity. Not just their tactics, but their spirit. They're beginning to understand, Thomas said quietly. That being born on a death world isn't just about surviving. Walker nodded, his healing wounds a testament to human resilience. It's about making sure everyone else survives too. In the medical bays across the fleet, injured Marines prepared to return to battle. In training centers, Council species learned about human tactical doctrine. And in freed systems, former slaves looked to the stars with hope, knowing the Deathworlders fought for them. The galaxy was changing. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was changing for the better. The observation deck of the human medical ship Mercy offered a stunning view of the latest liberated planet. Commander Blue stood there, watching human doctors treat both crystal-mind prisoners and freed Council species with equal care. "I don't understand," he said to Major Walker, who stood beside him. 2 days ago, these humans were fighting the crystal minds. Now they're healing them." Walker smiled, his own recent scars still visible. "That's what they don't teach you about Deathworlders. We know when to fight and when to heal." Below them, a human doctor carefully treated a crystal mind warrior's shattered arm. The crystalline being had feared execution after capture. Instead, it was receiving the same medical care as everyone else. "Your bodies," Blue observed, "they're built for violence, for survival. Yet you choose to be gentle when you could destroy." "Being strong doesn't mean you have to be cruel," Walker replied. "Earth taught us that. Nature can be brutal, but it can also nurture. We learned from both." The ship's intercom crackled. Major Walker to command. Crystal Mind Fleet detected in Sector 7. As they hurried to the command center, they passed more scenes of humanity's dual nature. Marines in combat armor helped carry injured aliens. Engineers taught Council species how to defend themselves. Soldiers shared meals with former enemies. The command center was busy when they arrived. Captain Mills stood at the tactical display, studying the incoming Crystal Mind Fleet. "It's their largest force yet," Mills announced. "They're desperate now. They've seen what we can do." The tactical display showed 50 crystal mine ships approaching the human fleet's position, but something was different about their formation. "They're protecting something," Walker noted, pointing to the center of their fleet. "See how they're clustered." Mills nodded. "Intelligence suggests they're evacuating civilians. They never did that before. They're learning." "Learning what?" Blue asked. "That strength isn't just about winning battles," Mills replied. "It's about protecting what matters." The human fleet moved into position, but didn't attack. Instead, Mills opened a communication channel. "Crystal Mind Fleet," he broadcast, "we see you're protecting civilians. We offer you safe passage to neutral space. No combat needed." The response came quickly. "Why would Deathworlders show mercy?" "Because true strength means knowing when not to fight," Mills answered. After tense minutes, the Crystal Mind Fleet changed course, heading for the designated safe zone. No shots were fired. No lives were lost. "This is what humans truly are," Walker explained to Blue. "We're not just warriors. We're guardians, protectors, healers." Later, in the ship's mess hall, Council species sat with humans, sharing meals and stories. The Crystal Mind diplomat, sent to discuss terms, watched in amazement as species that should have been enemies laughed together. "We thought being born in harsh conditions made us superior," the diplomat said to Walker. "We thought it gave us the right to rule. But you humans, you learned something different from your death world." Walker nodded. "Earth tried to kill us every day. Storms, predators, disasters. We survived them all. But we also learned to help each other survive. That's the real lesson of a death world." Blue looked around the mess hall, seeing everything differently now. "When we first called you Deathworlders, it was out of fear. We saw only the strength, the potential for violence." "And now?" Walker asked. "Now we see the whole truth. You're not monsters. You're protectors who learn to be strong so others don't have to be." The news spread across the galaxy. The crystal mines were beginning to withdraw, not just from defeat in battle, but from seeing a different way to use their strength. Council species started studying human history, not to learn about war, but to understand how hardship could create compassion. As Walker watched humans and aliens working together, he smiled. "Maybe that's the real story of Deathworlders," he said. "Not that we learned to fight, but that we learned when to stop fighting." The galaxy was changing. The monsters weren't monsters after all. They were teachers, showing that true strength comes from protecting others, not dominating them. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council looked very different now. Where once only gentle world species sat in climate-controlled pods, now representatives from all worlds gathered. Humans and crystal minds sat side by side, their sturdy chairs a reminder of their similar origins. Head Counselor Reed stood at the central podium, addressing the largest gathering in Council history. 6 months ago, we faced extinction. In our desperation, we turned to those we once feared. Today, we celebrate not just victory, but understanding. Ambassador Thomas and Major Walker sat with Commander Blue, watching as the Crystal Mind Supreme Leader approached the podium. Its crystalline form no longer inspired terror, but respect. "We were wrong," the Crystal Leader's words echoed through the chamber. "We thought our strength gave us the right to rule. The humans taught us otherwise." The screens around the hall showed images from the past months. Human Marines teaching Crystal Mind warriors about protecting the weak. Crystal Mind engineers working with Council species to rebuild destroyed worlds. Former enemies becoming allies. "Our official surrender," the Crystal Leader continued, "is not just an end to war. It is a beginning. We ask to join your council, not as conquerors, but as guardians." The vote was unanimous. The Crystal Minds would help protect the galaxy they once tried to dominate. Major Walker took the podium next, his battle scars now marks of pride. "When you first called us Deathworlders, you didn't understand what that meant. You saw only the strength our harsh world gave us. Now you see the whole truth." The screens showed new images. Human medical ships treating victims of natural disasters. Crystal Mind vessels helping evacuate endangered colonies. Council species learning to defend themselves while maintaining their peaceful nature. "A death world doesn't just make you strong," Walker explained. "It teaches you the value of helping others survive. That's the lesson Earth taught us, and that's what we now teach others." Ambassador Thomas stepped forward. "Today, we propose a new organization, the Galactic Defense Force. Humans and Crystal Minds will serve as its backbone, but all species are welcome to join." Commander Blue, once terrified of Deathworlders, now stood proudly beside his human friends. "We used to think strength meant domination. The humans showed us it means protection." The council chambers erupted in applause as the new force was approved. But there was more. "We have another announcement," Reed said. "Our scientists have been studying human and crystal mind biology. We've learned that harsh conditions don't just create strong bodies, they create adaptable ones." The medical screens showed the research. How human DNA could help other species become stronger without losing their peaceful nature. How crystal mind crystalline structures could enhance council technology. Not to make weapons, but to build better ships, better homes, better futures. "The age of separation is over," Thomas declared. "No more fearing Deathworlders. No more hiding from strength. Together, we are stronger than apart." The final vote created a new council structure. Leadership shared between gentle world wisdom and Deathworlder strength. Protection and peace working hand in hand. As the ceremony ended, Walker found himself on the observation deck with Blue and a Crystal Mind warrior. "Did you ever imagine this?" Blue asked. "When we first called for help, did you think it would end like this?" Walker smiled. "Honestly, we just wanted to help. That's what Deathworlders do. We protect others." The Crystal Warrior nodded. "We learned that from you. Strength without compassion is just brutality." Below them, Earth shone like a blue jewel. Once feared, now celebrated. The planet that had forged humanity in fire and storm had given the galaxy something it desperately needed. Protectors who understood both strength and mercy. "So what do we call you now?" Blue asked. "We can't keep saying Deathworlders. It doesn't fit anymore." "Just call us friends," Walker replied. "After all, that's what we really are." As ships from all species sailed past the observation deck, their crews working together, the galaxy had changed forever. The monsters had become mentors. The feared had become family. And somewhere on Earth, storms still raged and disasters still struck. But now, the harsh world that had shaped humanity was teaching a greater lesson to the galaxy. True strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the choice to protect. The end.